Hey parents, welcome to the final video of this series. Congrats, you're almost through. Thank you again for taking the time to engage in this info. So a couple questions for you to consider as we prepare to wrap up the series. They're these. What is something you have heard that has really resonated with you? What is something that you are ready to put into action? And what is a question you are wrestling with? These are just some questions for you to consider as we finish up this series. And I'd love for you, if you want to share those with me, I'd love to hear them. I'd love to have some conversation with you about them. So write those down and consider thinking about them at the end of this video. So our session today, it's going to focus on the interactions that we need to be having with our kids concerning relationships, dating, and sexuality. So we're going to take a little bit of time to kind of talk about the talk, or really the conversation. So the whole goal in this series has been to provide you with information as well as inspiration. And I hope that you have received information through facts and concepts and the cultural realities pertaining to this topic. And I hope you found the information helpful and hopefully has helped inspire you in your role that God's called you to play in raising your kids to pursue sexual integrity. So we're going to get into the how of all this, and that's where it gets a little tricky. But one of the goals of this has been to just open a door for both you and your kids to have conversation. That's just breaching the subject's usually the hardest part. So I'm providing this as an opportunity for you and your kids to have some conversation by saying, hey, what are you learning about in youth group? Or, hey, Kevin taught me this in our parent series. So let's get into a bit of the how. So as I mentioned in week 1, and I've repeated, I'm not here to tell you how to parent your kids. I'm 30. I have 1 2.5-year-old and one on the way. I'm no expert at all. There are many things you all could teach me about parenting, and you have taught me about parenting. But I'm going to throw out some ideas for you and some tips that I found just kind of through my own research, as well as talking to other youth pastors on their experience they've had with walking through these type of things with teens and parents. So in the end, you're going to need to just take these thoughts that we talk about and adapt them into your own family context. So here we go. First thing, be the first to talk about it. So here's the thing, no matter how awkward it is, your kids need to be hearing from you about sex, and they need you to be the first that they hear it from. So I really hope that you already have had that initial birds and the bees kind of talk with your kids, especially when they're in high school. I really hope you've talked to them about that. And then they're in middle school, I hope you've had that talk too, or at least that you're planning on having it with them soon. And I understand that you might hold back thinking, my son or my daughter is so naive to all of this. I don't want to talk about it too soon and accelerate intrigue or interest. And that is a tough kind of line to draw, and you know your kids best. But ultimately, I think you're risking far more by waiting too long to have the conversation than you are by having it too soon. So as you talk about this with your kids, especially in the initial talk, make sure it kind of covers both the physiological side and the theological side. You obviously need to walk through the mechanics, and where I'm guessing, that's the time you kind of stumble through your words, and you probably sweat a lot, and you probably need to pour yourself a cold one afterwards or something of that nature, because it's kind of uncomfortable. But the element that we also need to talk about in the same breath as walk through the points we talked about last session with God's purposes and parameters for sex. Our schools generally cover the basics of the physiological side, and I think it's an important role that we play in this journey is to lift up the theological aspects of sex, because unless they're at Kalamazoo Christian, they're not going to get that. And even then, they don't get it too frequently. So the more points of contact we have with that, the better. Next, keep talking about it. It's my opinion that the bigger struggle in Christian homes, it's not that initial birds and bees talk, but instead it's that creating intentional space for healthy and meaningful ongoing conversation. And it's tricky because I understand there's so much to juggle in parenting. And then you throw in the level of awkwardness that can come between parents and kids with this topic. We can easily avoid it, even though we know it's highly valuable. So I would love to see your kids be convinced that there is nobody on earth who could give them better information or guidance on this than you can. One key statement that goes a long way with this, and you might already be asking your kids this, or you might have already told them this, but it certainly pertains to this topic. You can ask me anything. You can ask me anything. They might know that, or you might think you have that set up in your relationship with your kids, but it's very helpful to clarify to them that when you mean anything, it includes anything. Nothing's off limits within the realm of any topic, but including love, relationships, and sex. Maybe they hear a word or a phrase at school that is clearly connected to sexual activity. They have no clue what it is. Just let them know that they can come to you. And that you won't laugh at them. You're not going to judge them for being curious or wondering what it means, and that you'll answer their question and discuss what they should do with their newfound information. John 16:13 says this, "But he, the Spirit of truth, comes, and he will guide you into all the truth. He will not speak on his own. He will speak only what he hears, and he will tell you what is yet to come." So, as they come with their questions, you should be affirming, caring, and confident outwardly. Inwardly, you should be screaming out to God, "Spirit, give me discernment and courage in this moment. Let me know how to respond, and please, God, give me the strength to do it." And this is the awesome thing. We can trust that He will do just that. At the same time, we all know that if we wait for our teens to bring something up with us, we're going to be waiting for a long time, right? So even though you can ask me anything as a valuable message to your kids for them to hear, they may never ask you anything. But if the conversation door is to stay open, you may have to start the conversations. So one of the best ways to ease this door open versus forcing it open comes by asking questions. So here's 2 simple tips when it comes to asking questions. First is to ask open-ended questions. You know this. Teens are the experts at giving one-word answers, right? How was school today? Fine, or boring, or just some inaudible grunt, right? But we will have better results when our questions are framed in a way that one-word answers are just not possible. So instead of asking, "How was school today?" we ask, "What is one highlight from today? And what's one low light from today?" And when it comes to asking questions about dating and sex, some of the best open-ended questions start with statements like, "What do you think?" Okay? So what do you think? An example. What do you think is the general attitude at your school when it comes to pornography? So, in that question, there's potential for a one-word or a very short answer like good or mixed or I don't know. So we need a follow-up question, right? And I recommend this one. Why do you say that? So what do you think is the general attitude? And then why do you say that? And this ties into the second tip, which is to start general and move to specific. So let your first questions be one where your kids run no risk of incriminating themselves or revealing their own opinions on the matter. Allow them to share general thoughts on the topic and then kind of begin to drill it down to their personal opinion or experience. So let's say you're talking with your son. You start with the open-ended question I just referenced. What do you think is the general attitude at your school when it comes to pornography? He gets to talk outside of his own personal experience. So instead, he's kind of the authority on his school culture. And after you discuss it a bit, you can drill it down a little closer to home. What do you think is the general attitude among your friends when it comes to pornography? So we go from school, we go down a layer to friends here, and then after you talk about that a little bit, you can go more personal. What are your thoughts on pornography? You can take this topic and effectively switch it to others. The beauty is that you're able to ease into the discussion with your kids about what is actually going on in his or her life. You get an idea of what the people he rolls with, what they think. So it kind of reveals those friendships, and if they're healthy or not, it reveals what the school is dealing with as well. But then the most important thing is it hopefully opens the door for your child to feel comfortable sharing these things. I hope that's helpful. And we're just going to stay on the theme of a few more practical tips that I hope can assist you as you keep talking with your teens about this stuff. Essentially, I'm just trying to give you as many tools for your toolbox as possible. So, there is power in your own story. There's a common tension for parents in how much we share with teens concerning our past struggles and failures. And it can become a huge mental battle when or if our relational or sexual compromise, if we have experienced any of that in our past, then it's hard for us to know what to do with that. So this is I'm sharing just some opinions here. So take this, hold it up to your own values and what you feel, and ultimately decide for yourself what to do with it. But I believe that your own past victories and your struggles can be a huge resource with your kids. There are 4 questions I encourage you to think through when it comes to your own story. The first is this: what did I get right? So where did you succeed when it came to how you handled dating and sex? Walk through the choices and the moments when you look back and say, I'm so glad I chose this path, and here's how it has played into who I am today. Share these experiences with your kid and steer them in the same direction. On the flip side, what did I get wrong? Where did you royally mess up? Now, as you consider this, how can you draw from your experiences to coach your kids in a different direction? The trick, of course, is deciding the level of appropriate detail you will get into with your kids. That's ultimately your decision. And I know that one thing that often holds us back is the fear that they will use our mistakes as an excuse to do the same. So when I share out of my own specific failures, this is how I try and present it. I'll say something like this: listen closely. This issue is a big deal to me because I got it wrong. You see, instead of doing this, the thing you hope they will do, I instead did this. This is how I failed. This is how I went in a totally different direction. And you kind of do it without glorifying that decision you made. And then you can say something like this: now I'm so grateful God forgives and that He has restored me. But if I could go back to teenage me, I would warn him against the pain and hurt caused by this poor decision. I can't do that, but I can challenge you to not make the same mistake I did. All right, number 3, what was missing? What conversations or relationships were missing from your life that ended up hindering your ability to walk in sexual integrity? This is more for you to process so you can make sure your teen is getting whatever you didn't. You don't necessarily have to talk to them about what was missing, but it's helpful to realize, man, I really wish I knew that, but I just didn't. So I want to make sure my kid knows that. Finally, number 4, what was confused? So where do you find yourself getting really confused in the whole dating scene? This helps keep perspective and increase empathy toward your kids as they walk through this journey. It also may help you think through ways to provide better clarity with your kids. It's also really just interesting to have conversations with the students about the landscape they're navigating. We talked about that in week 1. I just was asking the kids, what are some of the unwritten dating rules that exist kind of today? And I shared that back in my day, one of the unwritten rules was that girls don't ask a guy out because that comes off as overly aggressive and perhaps desperate. It was just something that wasn't done frequently. That's changed now quite a bit, but some of that still holds true. One of their unwritten rules is if someone messages you that you're like dating or interested in, you better message them right back, or else they're going to read into it that you don't like them or something, or they're mad or something like that. Something that we may never have thought of, but that's a new rule that's kind of common for them. So it's really interesting just to open up the conversation. What confused you? And then ask them what confuses you, because you'll learn some stuff too. Okay. So we're going to talk briefly about avoiding the dating world ditches. So there are plenty of different ideas and convictions how Christians should handle dating in the teen years. Rather than give you clear lines when it comes to this topic, I'd like to give you some lanes instead. So I've observed some clear examples where parents have found themselves in a ditch and how they can handle the dating world. And staying out of these ditches, I think we can stay on the lane towards health. The first is this: all rules versus you figure it out. So on one extreme, there's parenting where the parent plays the role of a dictator. They make every call on the when, the who, the what, and the where of dating. Then there's the other extreme. There's parents who place 0 guidelines, and the thought is, hey, I trust you, you figure it out. Now, a lot of times, both of these paths lead to messes. But somewhere in the middle of them, you can find a parent who sets an identifiable and age-appropriate guideline with a level of freedom and empowerment as well. And I recommend you find that place with your own kids. The next is this: ignorance or avoidance versus the matchmaker. As parents, some of us might think the less I know, the better. But the other extreme is when parents are far too involved with their kids' dating relationships, where if they don't have a boyfriend or girlfriend, you start to pressure them to find one. But somewhere in between those two, there are parents who authentically care about their kids' dating relationships, primarily because they care about their kids. And that's where I encourage you to find yourself. Finally, this one: join the family versus you are the enemy. So there are families who basically bring the teenage boyfriend or girlfriend right into the family fold. If there's a special family meal or a tradition or a celebration, the significant other is right there. Now, something helpful with that, keep in mind, odds are very high that this is not your future son or daughter-in-law. So now that's just something to keep in mind. I'll just leave that there. But on the other end of the spectrum, there's parents who convince the significant other that he or she is public enemy number 1. There's no intentional interaction except to instill the fear of God into the monster that is stealing your baby away from you. And that's cool and all, until they run off in the middle of the night and they elope or something crazy like that, right? So somewhere in the middle of that, there's parenting that prioritizes your kid while conveying your expectations with the one he or she is dating. And now, if just a few closing thoughts on statements that I believe are important for your kids to hear from you. I'm sure you've said many of these. Maybe you've said them all. But I want to mention these again just because they're so helpful for your teens to hear. So I mentioned one earlier. It was, you can ask me anything. That just opening up the door for trust. You can ask me anything. I won't judge you. I won't be mad at you for asking it. I want to have open, honest dialogue with you. Here are a few more I believe will help nurture healthy conversations. Here's this one. I'm here to walk with you. So this just affirms that you're not going anywhere. You're not running away. You're here to walk with them through whatever they're going through. You don't need a boyfriend or a girlfriend. So in a world that promotes so much of your identity is based on who you are matched up with, remind your sons and daughters that Jesus is enough. Here's another one. If you are ever in a situation you are uncomfortable with, use us as your excuse. Let your kids know you are okay being those lame parents if it helps them get out of a situation where they are uncomfortable or feel they are at risk or compromise. I've told them that they can use me that way too. Give them an out if they get in a situation they're uncomfortable with. And then this one. I love watching you pursue Christ. As you seek to emphasize the importance of sexual integrity and lift up a biblical sexual ethic in your home, don't forget it is only in support of the most significant goal you have for your teenager, that he or she is passionately following Christ. And on that note, I want to leave you with a statement we started this journey with. So it's the one that we try to drive home with our students every time we talk about this topic of relationships and dating. And it's this: unless I'm wholeheartedly pursuing a relationship with Christ, all other relationships will be a hopeless attempt to fill that void. So I just offer those up as some hopefully helpful tools for you to have some open, honest dialogue with your kids. I know all your kids, it's a great batch of kids, and you're a great batch of parents. So if you have anything that you're struggling with, you want to talk about, I am here for you. I am just as much a resource to you as I am to your kids. So please talk to me. I ultimately, too, just want to say thank you for going on this journey with me. This is like you're the graduating class of Journey Parents, year 2018. So congratulations. Thank you for sitting through these long videos. I really hope you were able to take something away with you from here and to learn and to grow and to learn some new things. So as we wrap up the series, I want to give you just a few prompts so that you can have some more discussion, perhaps with your spouse or someone close to you, on what to do from here. And again, I'd love to talk about any of these with you as well. So here are the questions. I leave these with you. What do you need to communicate to our kids about sexuality, and when and how are we going to communicate it? What accountabilities do we have or need when it comes to internet and cell phone usage? What are our expectations and guidelines when it comes to dating relationships? What is our game plan if and when we encounter sexual compromise with our kids? When are we going to go out on a date and follow it up with a little integrity of our own? That last one is just an encouragement for you to continue to pursue each other if you are married and in a mutual relationship. What you model for your kids is so important. And if you don't have that, that's okay, because what you talk about and how you interact with your kids is just as important. So thankful for what you're doing. Please reach out to me if you have any questions. Thank you so much. See you later.